Winter came to Podchef Island in an unexpected way this year. Cold weather and lots of snow, just in time to celebrate the solstice. It was a wonderful surprise, but the snow did interrupt certain plans.
It's the end of November, and things are pretty well cleared out of the polytunnel. I'm getting a late start on planting some winter greens. In order to give myself every chance of success for getting some lettuces this winter, I've decided to go ahead and put in a hotbed. Now, I live in a pretty mild climate, and we can grow things most of the year round, and with global climate change, the chances of that are probably increasing. The main problem with my place right here by the water is the wind comes off the water, chilling things down during the winter, and we get some tremendous storms. So even though the temperature is, today, perhaps 15 degrees warmer than the outside air temperature, on a sunny day that's fine. But when it's gray and cold, rainy, or windy, the temperature in here can drop dramatically. And what I need to do is keep the soil temperature up, closer to the ground. Now what I could do is obviously put in some hoops over the crops and put a layer of remay or garden fleece over the vegetables, kind of a polytunnel within a polytunnel. That can work quite well, but that's pretty tricky to do unless you've got a lot of material and can cover a lot of ground. I want to grow several different types of lettuces and some other different greens this winter. What I've done is dig a hole about 3 feet wide by 7 feet wide by a shovel and a half deep. And in it, I'm going to pour some fresh horse manure. Now I'm hoping that by getting a depth of about 8 inches of horse manure and then covering that with about 4 inches of soil to grow in, I'll get a pretty good hotbed. All I need to do is really increase the temperature of the soil by about 5 degrees, enough to make a dramatic difference and allow me to grow some winter veg. Who knows? We're going to give it a shot. There's several points to a hotbed. The manure within it generates the heat, and the fresher the manure, the better. Now I've just gathered some from a neighbor's horse pasture and gotten as fresh as I could get. I've put it in several buckets. Once it's all together, it'll start generating some heat as the thermal mass starts cooking. The key to success is going to be that 4 inches of soil above, because you want to separate the roots out from the hot manure, because it's so rich and so fresh that it'll actually burn and wither the roots and the plants won't succeed. Lettuces fortunately have a fairly shallow root system. If it was at all in question about damaging the roots of the plants, I would simply put the plants in clay pots like the Victorians used to and set the clay pots with their own contained soil right in the fresh manure bed. Let's give it a shot. Finally, I'm going to cover the packed manure with about 4 inches of soil. And this will be the topsoil that I dug out and set aside from where I opened up the ditch. If you do this, you might want to make sure to mark the 4 corners of your bed so that you know where it is later on. I've set this bed right in the central path of the polytunnel, which was where we grew the tomatoes this year. Next year, we'll be growing our crops on either side of the central path, rather than right down the middle. So it's pretty good odds that we won't hit this patch of rich, fresh manure except on the periphery, which is probably a good thing. But then again, by summer, a lot of this fresh manure will have broken down enough to not burn the roots. I'm gonna go ahead and let this patch get on undisturbed for a few days. Let the manure start cooking and warming the soil up. Then I'll come back and rake things out level and smooth and plant my drills of lettuces and rocket and Asian greens. We'll revisit this patch later on in the winter, and I'll let you know how things come along. Well, it's just a few days before Christmas. And as you can see, we've had an amazing amount of snow here on the island. We rarely get snow, and in the 18 years I've lived here, this is only the third largest amount of snowfall we've seen, which is pretty amazing in itself. It's all due to go away soon. I don't think there'll be a white Christmas here on the Smallholding. We can still hope and enjoy what we have right now. In the run-up to Christmas, I'm getting busy preparing our Christmas dinner, which this year, again, is our traditional smoked ham. I'm just stocking up the smokehouse for about the third time today for what will be a few of just the several additions of applewood that it'll take to smoke this year's Christmas ham over the next 24 hours. You've seen my crazy temporary knock-up smokehouse and probably looked and laughed at it, but it really does an amazing job. With a fire down on the ground and the meat hung up high in the smokehouse, the smoke has enough chance to cool before it reaches the meat. So we get a nice even cold smoking. And the house is big enough to smoke several hams, sausages, bacons, whatever. I did the other parts of the pig, the bacons and some picnic shoulders and some sausages earlier, and so it's just the ham in here right now. But it still works tremendously well for what didn't cost more than $50. This rare spate of bitter cold weather and snowfall has caused a few setbacks on the Smallholding. Not only did several nights of sub-freezing weather cause the loss of most of the green things growing in the garden, which we're usually able to limp through most of the winter, but we also had a setback with the polytunnel when it collapsed under an amazing 6 inches of heavy snow, which we had overnight.
Let's go, girl. Waking up early on a Sunday morning for chores to find 6 inches of snow is odd enough. But to find the polytunnel collapsed, after it had survived almost 6 inches already, was a surprise. I guess I didn't stay up late enough Saturday to knock enough of the snow off.
Oh dear. It's a tad bowed in. Krednick. Oh dear, it's gone inside out. Well, we can see. Oh dear. Wonder what's left under there. Good thing this thing's flexible.
We worked hard to clear the snow off, in between wind and snowstorms, and soon enough our efforts were rewarded. The polytunnel was raised.
It's not the end of the polytunnel, but it'll take quite a bit of surgery to get it back up and going. And just when I was beginning to see a few sprouts in some of the seeds I planted earlier. But on a clear and cold winter day like this, there's still some wonderful things to remember and think about that have happened in the last few months that have led up to this Christmas season, which has only been made more magical by the snow.
In late October, I helped our Uncle Wayne reclaim a winch from a 1924 Dodge sedan, which had been turned into a Capistan unit for hauling boats ashore during the Depression. Long idle, Wayne wanted the winch for one of his contraptions, and I was happy to have the derelict vehicle cleared off the farm. it was an incredibly clever bit of recycling at the time. I was almost sad to see it go. Then, at the beginning of November, after a late apple season, I got to pressing cider. Using my neighbor's cider press is a chore, but I was able to turn several 100 pounds of apples into almost 20 gallons of cider. Enough for cooking, fresh drinking, and fermenting. At the end of November, it was pig butchering time. On a beautiful, crisp day, we dispatched Pinky Winky, and my daughter Una and I turned this beautiful 280-pound beast into 220 pounds of wonderful meat. Scalding and scraping a pig isn't easy work, but it is immensely rewarding, knowing we are keeping alive the traditional on-farm methods of pig slaughter. I fully believe that if you're going to eat meat, then you need to know where it comes from, how it was raised and prepared, and even participate in that yourself. Once the job is done, we headed over to the neighbor's walk-in refrigerator to store the meat for a few days until it could be cut and wrapped. Late autumn heading into winter is a busy time on the Smallholding. The procuring and storing of food for the winter, preparing for bad weather, and the extra work it brings in taking care of livestock. But I can't think of a more beautiful or fitting way to round out the year than the slow pace of a winter's day like this. Here's looking to the next year and all that it brings.
Boy, this guy, but sarkle as out of such no last year building. See, lock of it knows that I don't work as I did. So, when the shaska still name. No, I get how one drug and the work it's seen no wobbing it for a bill and the fear. See, and this is beginning. First, no, the dumb bash, bush, blow you in the finish. This is a rips it's film. Once, neither fucking at little homes and så kom sen för det så as som surfs det padel snam vi sal från den där pack för det jag har inget remember it's in the for